it's Rich, and in this episode, Rich reviews Godzilla Minus One. Let's go. Welcome back to Rich Reviews, no nonsense movie chat from the UK. So Godzilla Minus One, the latest in the Godzilla cinema movies. Yet another Godzilla film. Or is it? See, this one's different, and it's really different. Let me try and explain. So Japan's got its very own large set of Godzilla movies. There's 33 in total, and this Godzilla Minus One is the 33rd film in what's called their Toho franchise. Many of you watching this will probably know of the Hollywood big budget films, probably up to the latest Godzilla vs. Kong, and to the casual audience, you might have some vague recollection that there's been some strange, black and white man in a suit Japanese Godzilla old film from the 80s or 70s. And you'd be right too, they've been going for years, but Godzilla is the big kind of character over there, and Minus One is the latest of these entries. This has got nothing to do with the recent Hollywood blockbuster style films in the slightest. To give some clarity, here's a timeline of what people will recognise. 1998, we got Godzilla, a standalone film starring Matthew Broderick. Typical big budget, big effects, humans save the day, woohoo! It's all a bit lame, but I do have a soft spot for it. But it's been on telly many times. You're probably sick of seeing this one. In 2005, we got King Kong with Jack Black and Naomi Watts. Again, it's a standalone film. It's not connected to anything moving forward at all. It's a good film, but again, been on telly far too much. You're probably sick of this now as well. In 2014, we got Godzilla by Gareth Edwards. This is a much darker and less popcorn flick fun, being a bit more grim and gritty. This has not been on telly much at all, and most people would assume, if you were flicking through a TV guide, that this would be the 1998 one, and it's not. This one's good. It sounds impressive too. You should watch this if you've not seen this one. In 2017, we got Kong Skull Island, a kind of prequel to the Gareth Edwards Godzilla just mentioned. It's the early years of Kong, and it ends with a Godzilla kind of cliffhanger post-credit scene. It's a so-so run-of-the-mill Hollywood popcorn flick again. And it also stars Loki, Nick Fury, and Captain Marvel too, which is not bad. It's a 3 out of 5. It's not bad, but it's forgettable. In 2019, we got Godzilla King of the Monsters, a sequel to the 2014 darker Godzilla, and it stars 11 out of Stranger Things. In 2021, we got Godzilla vs. Kong, which is a sequel to King of the Monsters and a sequel to Kong Skull Island. It then brings both characters and both worlds together. They fight a mecha Godzilla. Again, typical popcorn Hollywood flick, and I've lost interest in Godzilla at this point. In 2023, just recently, we've got Monarch Legacy of Monsters. It's a TV series that's set in the Hollywood recent universe, and this has actually been good so far. This focuses more on the characters living in the aftermath of Godzilla and some of the other little monsters that are still around. This is good. We then now get Godzilla Minus One, which is standalone and nothing to do with all those that I've just mentioned, so don't let this confuse you. Next year, in 2024, we get a sequel to Godzilla vs. Kong called Godzilla X Kong, The New Empire, and that is boring yawn fest by the sounds of it, but there we go. So Godzilla Minus One is, as I say, a fully standalone film in respects of the popular Hollywood big summer blockbusters, so don't worry about anything prior to this. This film, unlike the other 200 million budgets and more, this was made for under 15 million, and you would not know when watching it. 15 million is an incredibly low amount of money. Even typical rom-coms would cost more than that to make. Most casual moviegoers or people that watch any Godzilla film on TV or streaming will have seen these common Hollywood ones and have no idea about these Japanese versions. I've seen all the modern Godzilla films, and I think I've seen one of the old Japanese ones when I was a kid in the 80s on telly, but that's it. But this is my favourite Godzilla film to date, and I strongly urge you to consider this and take a look at it. This is a fully Japanese film though, so subtitles throughout, and because of that, you can't pick your phone up while semi-listening. It's all Japanese. If you can't handle a subtitled film, then maybe this won't work for you regardless of the quality. I'll mention this again later. I'm kind of 50-50 with subtitle films, but rest assured with this, I remained fully engaged for the whole 2 hours easily. So what does the -1 mean exactly? Well, the country's in a state of economic crisis and ruin in the late 1940s following the Second World War. It's left the country dealing with mountains of nuclear waste. They're at the very weakest and most vulnerable point ever as a nation, having to completely rebuild a society from scratch, or literally from zero. They're at 0 point. You introduce Godzilla into this zero state as if things couldn't be any worse, and you get a new definition, that being -1. The plot follows from the end of World War II in 1945, where our main lead, Shikishima, a Japanese kamikaze pilot, lands at an airbase on Odo Island, obviously not carrying out the kamikaze mission he probably should have done to end his life and take out as many enemies as possible in the process. That night, Godzilla, a dinosaur-like creature, out of nowhere attacks the inhabitants of the island, and so the film starts with a bang. Our lead returns home to find utter war devastation and family loss, which he feels some responsibility for not having completed his mission, and thus he's got a tremendous amount of guilt and PTSD to deal with. But he soon meets with this lady and a baby, and the film follows on from here. And I don't want to give too much plot points away to prevent any spoilers of things. Shikishima lives with the guilt of his role in the war not being fulfilled, together with the experience of meeting Godzilla. And then we time jump from various further years as our title character moves on in life. Needless to say, that wasn't the last we see of Godzilla, and he returns to wreak havoc on the city of Tokyo and other areas on land and sea, while we get to know the main characters and his friends and comrades along the way, all who work together with others to build a large team and plan some kind of takedown for our spiky beast. So is this another popcorn action flick? Well, no, not at all. This one is very different. So this one works differently because the focus is on the characters much more than we're used to in the Hollywood-style films. In those films, they're fast food movies. They're McDonald's movies. They're nice. You know what to expect. You order your food, you eat it, you leave, everything's fine. Nothing fancy. It does the job, but it's also forgetful. And the characters in those kind of films are generally wafer-thin, big-name movie stars. This is not like that. Not at all. These characters, you really do care for them. You get to know them well, and they're really well acted, especially Shikishima, our main lead. And he's kind of two sort of friends as well that he's with, and the kind of the lady friend he's got there. It's really good how they convey emotion, especially the post-war trauma, to happiness, to determination, to being scared and frightened to death of Godzilla. There's lots of character buildings in this. Much more of it not being around the Godzilla creature as well. Just more about the aftermath of war and survival, a country ruined by war, and how people come together to work through this aftermath. It's what makes a great movie and provides a solid narrative. You get that through line that great movies give to the audience and stick throughout. Even without the Godzilla creature, this would still have been a great, compelling, emotional movie for me. It really focuses on these people, and it's what drives the film along. It's not the monster itself. There's no big military operation that you tend to normally see. No boardroom meetings, no get me the president or any other hero to save the day. These are just normal people and a small bunch of soldiers that's just barely survived the Second World War and gone back home to ruins to rebuild their life. Godzilla is just something else, admittedly big, that's causing an additional headache in their life. Hence, they're at 0, and Godzilla ramps that to an even lower -1. But when he does come and cause some additional headache, he really does. And man, this looks good. The Godzilla doesn't look like any of the others that we've seen in the other films. He carries a very spiny back, and it's visually more like the old Japanese-style man-in-a-suit version, to be honest. Except looking very real and not like a man in a suit. It's really hard to explain, but he's really bottom heavy and looks kind of cranky and awkward at times until he starts to lurch forward and he turns into something very evil and vicious, and it is pretty amazing, to be honest. He's really slow in the way he moves and not out for feeding or breeding or anything like that. This one just tramples and trashes anything. It stands on people, flings people around with no purpose, and it makes it much more unpredictable and frightening too. There just seems to be no reason for what he's doing or why he's there. It also doesn't take the typical city street routes that cause some occasional damage that you're used to seeing, and then you get all the helicopters flying around. This is different. It kind of just plows through whatever it fancies and then even wrecks things on purpose, again, for no apparent reason. The blue laser charge that it emits, which we've seen now in most of the recent Godzilla films, this one, though, is on a whole other level. The build-up's gorgeous, and when it blasts, it's an insane massive blast with a bass-thumping nuclear boom and the effects of a nuclear bomb afterwards. It's absolutely awesome. What's been achieved here for under 15 million on screen is quite frankly staggering compared to almost any other Hollywood film. It's not that it looks better, it's that it looks just as good as the best out there for a fraction of the money. It's a real lesson to some of the massive Marvel films and other things of late, much of which will cost 200 plus million. And lots of that's going to be for high-paid actors and the ridiculous way in which they make these films, where they shoot up to the day and then have people working just, 100 hours a week, redoing effects over and over with green screens until release day. If this film had any green screen in it, I certainly couldn't tell, not one bit. But was it all good, or did some areas receive a bit of a -1 from me too? So I don't really have anything to mention here about things that didn't work, but maybe just something of caution. This is a 2-hour film, and it's 100% Japanese and subtitles, and that in itself might be enough to put some people off. It certainly doesn't make the film bad in any way at all. You just need to be aware of it. I suspected that even myself, I might find this difficult to sit through with it all being subtitles, but I just sat there glued for 2 hours without even realising I was reading at all. Just know this going into it. Also, the story's more around the characters and their building of life, which I feel works super well, to be honest. We get maybe 20 minutes of Godzilla in actual screen time, and it's spread across the film, but it's done in a clever way, so it's never questioned, and there's not these kind of evident big downtimes or big gaps in the film. It's spread really nicely, but it's different to what you've seen before. I think it's a good thing, but each to their own. And if you like fast-paced, plenty of dino action, fun movie, you've got to stick with the Hollywood versions. This is not fun. It's super emotional. Godzilla's not a hero or an anti-hero or goes from kind of angry to being some lovable beast. He's nothing like that. He's just a nasty piece of work, and that's it. So before I give my final thoughts, if you like what you see today, don't forget to check out my other videos. Feel free to like, follow my channel by subscribing for free, and share your thoughts in the comments below. So I'm going to give this one an easy 5 out of 5. I thought it was absolutely fantastic and a very refreshing change to this type of film. It wasn't what I expected, but in a good way. It takes a bit to get into and adjust to the subtitles and cast, but after 5-10 minutes, you soon do, and you get a great character story with solid emotions, coupled with a different kind of movie monster. So if you want to go and watch Godzilla -1, should you take a mate, a date, or stay up late and wait and watch it on streaming? I'd take a mate to this, but also you could actually take a date to it, because it's not just the usual typical Godzilla at all. There's some real good emotional story in this. It has a limited cinema run though, due to the release initially just being slated for Japan only, but because of its spread and success, it's now gone worldwide. So here in the UK, you can see it on most screens, and I'd consider this if you really want to see this. Otherwise, it's probably good for streaming at home, but get your sound really cranked up if you can and switch your phone off. You've got to read the screen, so it's difficult to look away, even for a couple of seconds. So a great film. What do you think of Godzilla -1? Leave a comment below. But until next time, keep smiling, peeps.